We're going to do the how the talentless Matt Walsh became popular, and then we're going to move on to some more fun.
Walsh is not an interesting guy. His talking points are poorly evidenced and infantile.
Stop saying fun, surely, fun, aware. Like, it's fine. On Matt Walsh is fun.
Delivery is flat and lacking in charisma, and the subjects he covers reveal an embarrassingly narrow perspective of the world. But he is incredibly lucky, and that's the secret to his success. Matt Walsh matters insofar that he serves as an object lesson on how right-wing media figures continuously push on the limits of acceptable discourse to drag society backwards into a regressive state that strips away the rights of people to create a religiously centered culture. This kind of extreme Christian conservatism has been going on for a long time, and it's important to continuously oppose. But Matt Walsh himself, he's mediocre at best. There are a lot of other people doing the same thing and often much better than he is, but why is he someone people suddenly have to care about? Let's do a quick rundown of this guy's history if you're not familiar with him. Originally a radio host in Delaware, Walsh bounced around from a few jobs, struggling to last for more than a year or two. He started a blog in 2012, eventually catching the attention of Glenn Beck's The Blaze in 2014. In 2017, he started writing for Ben Shapiro's The Daily Wire, and he got his own show, The Matt Walsh Show, in 2018. But it wasn't until 2022 that he really started catching people's eye, notably with his anti-trans movie, What is a Woman? As his biggest success by far, it would be weird not to mention it, but I'm not going to go too into depth on this.
I love this because, like, one of the funniest parts about Matt Walsh's career or this documentary is that, like, it is so... like it's like actively trying to create more mentally ill people. Okay. Not only is like this documentary insane. Okay. Not only is this documentary absolutely insane, it's been really funny to see Matt Walsh just complain about it non-stop, dude. He has been actively complaining about, like, one, not getting enough play out of Twitter not actually giving it enough attention. You know, Rotten Tomatoes like review bombing it positively, but like no serious critic has like reviewed it. It sucks from the perspective of just like enjoyable content.
Keep up the G work.
It has a bunch of like ironic moments of hypocrisy in it. And it ultimately doesn't really establish anything. It ultimately doesn't really establish anything other than, doing the classic, like, child dialogue tree of just constantly repeating the same question over and over again, being like, what is a woman? What? Why? 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 Until you, like, through the war of attrition, tire out your interlocutor. And that's basically the entire movie, or the entire documentary, is about semantics, and it is very stupid. And whenever there is like a person, whenever there's like an actual person that is like knowledgeable over whatever a woman is, right, like the academic, he will just like belittle them and cut their responses and say too long, didn't read. It trolls the libs, you know what I mean? It trolls trans people. And, trans people are very active online, so they react to it a lot. But also, transphobic people are very active online. I mean, holy So even if they are not in the real world or a relatively insignificant group of people online, especially on Twitter, as they are actively being boosted by Elon Musk, the likes of Elon Musk and whatnot, they get a lot of play, and so is Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is getting a lot of play on Twitter for being a hateful little bigot, like a massive gremlin, right? So all of that is just irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I know it feels hard to, especially if you spend a lot of your time online, it feels like everyone hates you. 26,000 likes on Twitter might seem like a lot if you spend a lot of your time on Twitter, okay? Especially when it's being pushed actively by Twitter. But 26,000 likes is, in the grand scheme of things, completely ridiculous. When you're extremely online, you're motivated by everything that you're seeing. You're guided by it. You're conditioned into believing that it's like way more significant in the real world than it actually is. So when you see stuff like Matt Walsh crying on Twitter about how it's been such a success, actually, that the left can only resort to flooding the audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes with 1-star ratings from people who didn't watch the film. If you actually did watch it, make sure to go and leave a review. And it has like 27,000 likes. I need you to understand that it's all bullshit. This is not like a real thing. Wouldn't you say that Matt Walsh's traction on Twitter reflects wider U.S. sentiment and ideology? I think it goes beyond Walsh himself. No, that's actually the exact opposite of what I'm saying. The exact opposite of what I'm saying is that there are certain societal forms of oppression, okay? There are certain structural forms of oppression that are significantly more widely shared and normalized than transphobia, okay? And those forms of oppression are patriarchal constructs, anything that leans on misogyny, Andrew Tate being a great example of someone who was able to spearhead this movement and make himself profoundly successful and famous, or anti-black white supremacist forms of racism. And that's like pretty much the entirety of the conservative movement in general. These people are more household memes and more household names than Matt Walsh is, because Matt Walsh and his hyperfixation, his hyperfocus is on trans people. And most people, for the most people do not care about trans people. They just have apathy. Transphobia is the normative position. Of course it is. But how people react to transphobia or how people make it their life's mission to like constantly dunk on trans people is actually highlighted in the social spheres, but it's still fulfilling it's just fulfilling a niche. Okay, that's it. It makes it, and its designed purpose, its slated purpose is to make you feel shitty. If you're a trans person, if you have a trans loved one in your life, the design purpose is to make you feel shitty. It's like, oh, everyone hates you. Everyone hates you. It's not real. That's not real. Everyone doesn't hate you. Most people don't give a shit about you. Most people don't care about you. Most people don't think about you. I'm loving this optimism arc right now. I'm not even saying this to be optimistic, okay? I'm not even saying this to be optimistic. I'm saying this because, like, while most people, like I said, are apathetic to trans people in general, and they can certainly be convinced to be transphobic, okay, like easily, most people just overall don't give a shit. And That's the true. People that care about it and make it their hyperfixation come across as needy and wet losers, okay? You can never convince me that a guy who literally is like going to Target and having an aneurysm because they saw a rainbow-colored binky is a normal person. No normal American, no broader majority of the population will look at that and go, that's the right way to go. That's actually great. That's like, I love this rap song about washing the aisles of Target with the blood of Christ. They come across as like completely mentally ill and in need of like desperate medical attention. Let's continue.
This particular movie because it's been thoroughly debunked by other people on YouTube. So if you want a detailed breakdown, I would recommend Jessie Gender's videos on the subject. She goes into great detail on why this movie is a load of propaganda. But we do at least have to address what kind of content he puts out there, so instead I'm going to take a look at what it's like to watch his show. The Matt Walsh Show has a basic formula. He has one story he speaks to for the first 15 to 20 minutes of the show.
I want to keep watching
then
this
video. Series of 5 headlines he gives a couple of minutes to. Then he responds to viewer comments, and finally one last story to cap off the episode. Although it's segmented to give the show the appearance of variety, the only real difference is the length of each segment, as pretty much all of it is just Walsh commenting on a piece of news or another commentary. The first thing I noticed while watching is that, even for the big stories up front, Matt Walsh very rarely goes.
The talentless Matt Walsh became so popular because no matter how untalented he is, he's a person saying common sense shit on a time where people are dumb as fuck. He's not saying common sense shit. I'm sorry. I've never encountered a person in the wild who I thought was like a normal dude who told me about children's genitalia. That's not common sense shit. Constantly and endlessly foaming out of the mouth, thinking about children's penises is not normal. Okay? It's not. It's not normal at all. It's actually very abnormal. And not only that, not only is it abnormal, but like the American voters who are probably some of the most normal and abnormal, but some of the most normal. The broadest majority of American voters are some of the most normal you've ever seen, okay? People with houses that are boomers, that have like, that have experienced some of the remaining social safety nets, Like, that's the average voter. The average voter is like a suburban house mom, a suburban housewife, a suburban dad who's like owns an HVAC business. These people these people thought that this kind of momentum towards like CRT and like, you know, anti-trans shit was literally objectively too disgusting to think about. Most of those people know gay people now, okay? Cat's out of the bag. So like they have like children who might be queer, or they have children whose friends are queer that comes to their house and drinks apple juice with them. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to like aggressively captivate an audience to just despise any and all mention of queer culture and people being queer, and especially with like transness as well. You're not going to be able to captivate them into like doing hate crimes on a regular. Okay, here, let's look at this. Views of laws and policies related to transgender issues differ widely by policy. And the trans issues part is like probably the peak of it. You know what I mean? It's the most like aggressive one. It's the most normative portion of this like hatred. Ultimately, what ended up happening is, even amongst like Republicans, protect transgender people from discrimination in jobs, housing, and public spaces, 80%. Across all adults, 64, 58. Make it illegal for healthcare professionals to help someone under 18 with medical care for gender transition. Require that trans athletes compete on teams that match the sex they were assigned at birth, 58%. Overall, the more you go crazy on either side of the issue, the more you land at like, people being like, I don't really give a shit about this. After I came out as trans, nearly all the transphobes in my life just chilled out. As more people know trans people, they just chill out. That is true. Exactly. Regardless of like gender identity perspectives from the Pew Research Center, it didn't bear itself out in the theory. Or not in the theory, sorry, in practice. Because when you looked at the midterms, trans issues and crime were like the number one, number two issues that like a lot of these people that talked about that ended up losing their elections. They lost because they thought that the Matt Walshes of the world were actually listening to the interests of their audiences, like listening to the interests of the Republican voter base, and actually they got too invested in like dumb issues that people didn't actually care about. 64% of the country strongly favors protecting transgender people from discrimination in jobs, housing, and public spaces. 64%. 25% neither favor nor oppose it. 10% strongly oppose it. The only issue is trans sports. That's it. That's the only issue where people pop the fuck off, okay? Require that trans athletes compete on teams that match the sex they were assigned at birth. Talked about this already. And that was focus tested. Like, that's the reason why they hyper focused on that and constantly hit that line. Because when they did it on the bathroom shit, everyone was like, dude, fuck off. And that's not even because of trans people. That's because they were able to capture the American sensibilities on like the false notion of fairness in sports, okay? That's the only reason why this shit worked so hard. Most Americans, this is a separate poll, but most Americans say companies should publicly support LGBTQ community, survey finds. 3 out of 4 respondents say they feel comfortable seeing LGBT people in advertisements, according to a new survey by the LGBTQ advocacy group GLAAD. I mean, study after study shows the actual same thing, okay? It's just like the more you let transphobia go unhinged, the more a lot of like cishet people are going to be transvestigated. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, transvestigators, which is the highest form of transphobia, okay? Transvestigators, who are the biggest transphobes, they arrive at the same fucking reality that trans advocates are saying, which is that like gender is not binary. Gender is a social construct. That's why they keep investigating cis people and claiming that they're trans. Anyone could be trans. And we can always tell people, always get it wrong. They get it wrong so much. They transvestigated me, man. They said, because I got a fat ass from squatting more weight than they'll never be able to touch. They were like, oh, Hassan has childbearing hips. He's like a lady. Got a big fat ass, so he must be a woman, actually. The reality is, if me, with my 6'4", 245-pound frame, if I am a trans man, okay, then what the fuck is Ben Shapiro? Like, if you're transvestigating me, legitimately saying I'm a woman, or I'm AFAB, assigned female at birth, then goddamn, dude, medical science is phenomenal, and it kind of is actually. And the more this kind of like trans medicine improves, the worse these motherfuckers are gonna get. For Kaya, which is full of treats. Let's continue.
On several times an episode. In one episode from May 2nd, 2023, titled Princeton Professor Tries to Debunk Biology, Fails Hilariously, episode 1156, my god, he's done a lot of these, Walsh responds to an article published on the Scientific American website. For some context before we jump in, this article is titled, Here's Why Human Sex is Not Binary, Ova Don't Make a Woman, and Sperm Don't Make a Man, by Agustin Fuentes, a professor of anthropology at Princeton University. This article is a response to how the emphasis is often placed on how people are assigned male or female at birth on the basis of whether they produce sperm or ova. He provides a few examples of people reducing sex to one of those two things, and then explains with more examples and commentary from various scientific sources how the many complications of human sex make it difficult to place it in a binary. Here's an excerpt from the article that sums it up well.
When someone states that, quote, an organism's sex is defined by the type of gamete, sperm, or ova it has the function of producing, unquote, and argues that legal and social policy should be, quote, rooted in properties of bodies, unquote, they are not really talking about gametes and sex biology. They are arguing for a specific political and discriminatory definition of what is quote-unquote natural and quote-unquote right for humans based on a false representation of biology.
And he gives several historical examples of what that discrimination has often looked like. It's a pretty good article that offers a primary for why sex shouldn't be understood as a binary and focuses on how sex is used by political actors to discriminate against others. Matt Walsh is not so kind in his assessment of the article. What's most noticeable in his analysis, though, is how shallow his reading of the article is. Here's how he starts his segment.
Starting at the top of the article, it says, there are those politicians, pundits, and even a few scientists who maintain that whether our bodies make ova or sperm are all we need to know about sex. We already see the game that he's playing. The headline promises proof that human sex is not binary. This is a big promise, but then in the first sentence, Professor Fuentes sets himself up for a very different and much smaller task.
It's weird that Matt Walsh is calling the first sentence some kind of sleight of hand when it was clear what the article was about from the subheading, though that part of the article is never shown or read during this segment, just the broad headline up top. Kind of be like talking about the Star Wars movies without including their subheadings. It kind of is important to differentiate them and give you a little more context of what's being discussed, but instead we're getting context removed so Matt Walsh can more easily make his point. You really get the impression he either hasn't read or is deliberately ignoring certain parts of this article. Here's some more evidence of that.
He announces his intention to respond to the claim that whether our bodies make ova or sperm are all we need to know about sex, except that, well, nobody ever said that ova and sperm are all we need to know about sex.
If you read the original Scientific American article, you can see he's linked several examples of people saying just that. Not that you have to go anywhere else, because you can see Walsh do a version of it himself less than a minute later.
He's not actually, it looks like, going to be disproving it. He's just adding on other details. But even if those other details are true, that wouldn't disprove the basic fact that there are only male and female gametes, which means that there are only two sexes, which means that sex is binary.
Reading the article, Professor Fuentes clarifies that when someone, like Matt Walsh, claims there are other factors, they never seem to explain anything beyond genitals and gametes. This video is just another case of that. We're told there are other factors, but never what those factors actually are. Seems like it would be a really good time to bring them up, but we just don't get them here. The segment is exhausting in that it's more or less Walsh going through the article, reading lengthy excerpts, and reacting to them. But each time he misses crucial context that would either change or complicate what he's trying to respond to. He'll complain that the article is just making empty assertions, apparently unaware that in the original you can see it links to many sources, several from peer-reviewed journals. It actually assembles quite a bit of evidence to support each claim that's being made. Not that you could ever tell from the Walsh segment, since the excerpts are just displayed as text and you can't really tell they're linking to a lot of supporting information. Throughout this entire segment, Matt Walsh doesn't cite a single source. He just makes a vague allusion to the science. This is a pattern of his. The challenge in responding to so much of what Matt Walsh says is that he not only doesn't understand what he's responding to, whether that's deliberate or not, he also refuses to do any homework. If someone cites scientific research that counters his claim, he just doesn't acknowledge it. Walsh smugly argues at the end,
variations within a category do not invalidate.
This is a level 2 puzzle, by the way. So we're about to find out if she can actually do a level 2 puzzle.
Males need to exist as a category in order for us to say anything about a male, a human male, such as human males are all different. They have different expressions.
This article is not arguing that categories within sex don't exist. Categories do exist within a spectrum. When a scientist says light is a spectrum, for instance, they're not saying that colors don't exist, just that the boundaries between colors are not so clear-cut as they would be in a binary. And Walsh doesn't even seem to understand the basic point of this article. It's not about upending some kind of scientific consensus that he's imagined. It's using established science to talk about how that science is politicized. And Matt Walsh is doing that politicizing in this very video. He's not engaging with any of the material in a meaningful sense, he's just twisting it to meet his own ends. This is what Walsh's content often boils down to, butchering evidence to make a hateful point. In the May 3rd, 2023 episode of his show, Mothers of Trans Kids Give Insane Reasons for Transitioning Their Children, episode 1001.
She's figured out that she can move some of the parts, clearly, but she hasn't actually, she's figured out the important part. Wait, did she figured out to move the leaf part, but she hasn't been able to figure out that, like, she also needs to move the other into the hole after moving the leaf part. So, no. Oh, she's doing it. She did it. Now she got to move it back. Oh my God. Oh, she did it. Good girl. Good job. That's it. She did it. Good job. Also, we subtly moved away from Matt Walsh because it's too depressing, I feel like. This is a wonderful content creator. Clearly put a lot of work into this, José. And if you guys want to watch it, you can watch it. But I feel like it's just not very great for Sunday Fun Day. You know what I mean? We cover enough of these fucking transphobic demons. So I'm just, I think it's good to move away from it.